Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of Council, 13th of August. The year is flying past. Thank you for coming out on what is a bit of a wild and woolly night, and you're safe in here, stay safe on your way home. Nala kadich wajak mort kan kadak nija walilat budja. Wajinang wajak kadijin, wenyuting bula. Yeah. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle Walilup area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. The meeting tonight is recorded and is being streamed live online. So while all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and in particular members of the public who submit a question will be captured in the recording. We have three people who are apologies tonight. Councillor Lang is an apology, and Councillor Van Dawson and Councillor Thompson are both unwell and are both apologies for tonight. Do we have any applications for leave of absence from the councillors who are here? Nope. Are there any disclosures of interest by members? Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Thank you. I am declaring 2 proximity interest conflicts on items, one for item C25083, which is because there is a change of the listing of 85 South Street on the heritage list, and that is opposite 83 South Street, which is owned by my parents. And again for C25084, because there's a change to the listing of 81 South Street and the same issue arises.
Thank you. Councillor Graham?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'll be declaring an interest in C2508-3, the South Fremantle Heritage Area. My house has been listed as a contributory level 3, I believe, so I'll be declaring an interest in and leaving the room if I have to.
Thank you. And Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. On the same item, my house in South Fremantle apparently was contributory. It apparently isn't anymore. It's not my fault. People just had a different point of view. But my property is surrounded by heritage listed properties, and so I have to declare a proximity issue in that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. All right. There are no responses to previous public questions taken on notice. What you might have just noticed is that we have 3 councillors who are not here and 3 councillors who have just declared a proximity interest, which means we will not have a quorum tonight to be able to debate the South Fremantle heritage area. And know there's a number of you in the gallery who want to speak on that item. So what I'm going to do procedurally is ask those people who have a conflict to leave while we take the public comments on that item, and then come back in. I just had advice on this, so sorry if it's a bit fresh. And then we'll go to any other public questions. So just confirming that that's the advice. Yeah. So if those 3 people can leave while we take the public comments on that item, I appreciate this all is very procedural and not super fun. Yeah. Thank you. Yep. So we're coming to public question time. So I do have 3 people speaking on this item. We'll take those speakers first and we'll get you back in for any other public question time items. All right, so the 3 speakers I've got listed on this item, actually possibly 4. I'll bring you up to the microphone now. This is going to get deferred to the next meeting of council. So obviously some of the councillors who are here will also be in the room at the next meeting of council, and the elected members who are not here and are likely to be here next time will be able to listen to what you've got to say on the recording. So hopefully that's adequate. You're also, of course, welcome to come back next council meeting as well. So the first person I have listed is Amanda Butterworth. So if you'd like to come up to the microphone. Is Amanda here? No, Amanda. What about Eddie Marcus? Thanks, Eddie. If you would like to come up to the microphone. You've got 3 minutes, so it'll just give you a little alert when we get close to that time. Over to you. Thanks.
for your opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to speak on behalf of the property owner of 166 Hampton Road, who was going to ask for a deferral of it because she's currently overseas and would like to take the opportunity to address council herself on the issue. But I'd like to summarise just a couple of issues.
It doesn't sound like it's on. Luckily, you have a loud voice and we can hear you.
I present far too often for things. So it's a reasonable request, I think, for the owner to be allowed to address council directly, because it's a fairly complicated issue that this place, which was listed as a potential contributory place, was now going to be entered into the heritage list under the agenda item. There's a proposal for the site for social accommodation for people, predominantly older women, who can't afford local commercial rents, which would be a vital community asset for the site, providing safe, affordable housing for those in need. And the replacement building would match the style of the already existing strata buildings on the site, complementing both the church nearby, which is state heritage listed, and the streetscape. But at your meeting on 14th of May 2025, the Manager of Strategic Planning and City Design said that post-World War II housing would only be considered for protection if it forms part of a significant group or is distinctive in its own right. 166 Hampton Road meets neither of these tests. It is not part of a consistent group, it is common in design, has no distinct features and no significant historical associations. As a modest brick and tile post-war house, it does not meet the city's own agreed threshold for heritage significance. If it were part of a group that reflected post-war changes, that would be literally a different story. The owner supports the intent of protecting Fremantle's heritage, but heritage listing should be reserved for places that truly contribute to the shared history. Unlike the distinctive interwar facades of South Terrace, this property is an isolated example, offering no distinctive style, does not contribute to understanding Fremantle's identity. Heritage value is not just about age, it is about relevance, as much about rarity, integrity. This property falls short on all counts. Listing it would block the proposed social housing, limiting the best use of the site for some of the most vulnerable residents of our community. We should be enabling the community-minded projects like this, not adding an isolated, even if representative example, to a list that literally has hundreds of identical properties on it already. For these reasons, I was going to ask you to defer consideration until the owner could speak to you, or resolve today, which you probably can't do either, that 166 Hampton Road does not meet your own criteria for heritage listing. Let's reserve the heritage protection for places that truly deserve it within the city of Fremantle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and bang on 3 minutes. Very impressive. All right, the next person I have listed is Damien Lunt. Thanks, Damien.
Good evening. An objection to the proposed South Fremantle Heritage Policy change. Excuse me. This change is designed to provide clarity to residents, and we believe it doesn't achieve this. We purchased a home in Beaconsfield in 2018. We checked all the heritage registers, and we ensured there was no restrictions on developing our property. And there weren't. We're now halfway through a major renovation, and we've had to exclude any works to the front of our property because the council slapped a contributes to the Heritage of Fremantle label on the front of our property. There has been minimal research or study into this. The council has no photographic records of the original state of our house, and our house is far from original. It has been renovated several times from the 60s. The front wall panelling is not original. The gutters are not original. The window frames are not original. The house has been extended of the facade at the front to the south several times. We strongly believe the council is taking a half-baked approach to push this policy through without sufficient effort in establishing the heritage baseline of the city. To put this in perspective, our architect is a well-known Fremantle architect, and he has provided comment to us, and I've also spoken to an independent heritage consultant as well. Neither of them believe our home contributes to the heritage of Fremantle or as any heritage value at all. We understand from these proposed changes the emphasis will be on the ratepayer to then foot the bill to do further heritage studies at a cost of about $8,000 to $10,000, which we've been estimated. We actually want to improve the visual amenity of our house at the front, improve the street to engage more with our neighbours, be more social, and we believe policies such as these are regressive, rather than a progressive council approach. We believe it's about time the council listened to the ratepayers and instead of pushing through ill-considered and poorly planned policies such as this. Thank you.
Thank you. I might just see if I can get a comment from officers because there's sort of no specific in terms of the way forward for your property. It's not one that sort of was requested for deferral. So I might just see if we can get a comment from the Director of Strategic Planning about what the pathway forward might be for your renovation and your heritage status.
Through the chair, could I clarify what that address was? I missed it in the very first instance.
I'm not sure that we had the address. 3 Trafford Street. So I believe it is one of the properties that was listed for addition. I'm not sure.
Through the chair, I'm not aware of that actual DA, if it is in at the moment or if there's changes being made. I think between now and the next council meeting, strongly encourage you to come back through to the department and sit down with us and we can go through what that process will be. Off the top of my head, I'm unaware of what the works currently are that you're undertaking.
All right, so I think that's an invitation to have a chat with the planning team between now and this coming back to council so that we can get some sort of clearer advice on where things are at for you. Thank you. I also have Mark Jones listed to speak on this item as well. Thanks, Mark.
Mayor, councillors, I would choose to speak on the amendment to, my property in 16 Hickory Street, South Fremantle. It's been listed and I put in a contest to that and the City of Fremantle has acceded to most of that contesting in that it moved it to level 4 rather than level 3 and also corrected the age of the building and what you could see from the street front as well. But I noticed there's a listing for inherit and I don't think it should be listed in inherit because it's got right to, under this process, to demolish if approved by the City of Fremantle. I also did the due diligence for getting that demolition order, and that required me to research the property quite extensively, which I've got to say I enjoyed. But I could not find one person who had stayed in that house who was remotely interesting in any manner. Matter of fact, they were not listed anywhere at all. So I can't see that that level in the inherit could be addressed by putting it in there. There's nothing there to put in. Basically, it's my contest further, is that I don't think it should be put into inherit. I'm happy with it at level 4 and the constraints on level 4, and that's how it's been and always will be. But I don't think it should be moved into inherit.
Great. Well, given that we're not going to, I think, can be considering that tonight, that gives us a couple of weeks for officers to go away and review whether there is sort of grounds for listing and inherit. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Mark. All right. Were there any other speakers on this item? So as I said, we won't be able to make a decision on this item tonight. So the councillors have heard you here tonight. We will also ensure that the councillors who are not here have the opportunity to listen to it on the tape. But you're very welcome to come back again in 2 weeks' time as well, particularly if you feel like your case hasn't been heard or that you didn't get, you haven't had the opportunity to engage with council. Right, so I'll just bring the other councillors back in. You're welcome to stay for the remainder of the council meeting. We'll do the best to make it entertaining, but you're also welcome to leave if you'd prefer. All right, so I'll go to general public questions and statements. Usually the practice with planning items is that we take the questions before that particular item, particularly so that councillors are able to ask any questions they might have about that planning item. So I will do that as a general rule, but if there are people who are here who would like to get away, you're also welcome to make your statement during public question time, even if your planning item is further down the agenda. I'll remind you again of that at the end. But if we go to general questions and statements, the first one is Ian Kerr. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Mayor. After the MIDAP approval of a car wash at 234 South Terrace, Fremantle Shipping News reported, quote, the death of community planning, and argued it's time for a major review of WA's planning system to ensure community planning concerns are recognised as factors that are as important, if not more so, than other more technical considerations. However, Fremantle itself must bear some responsibility for this state of affairs, as one problem lies in the inconsistent way Fremantle engages with the community. For example, in the case of the South Beach parking extensions, which are currently underway, there was no community discussion or even awareness of the proposal, which had been rejected in the development of the South Beach Place Plan. Notices were only sent to, quote, nearby residents 2 weeks before works began, and there was no information for the broader community or for users of the South Beach Reserve. So I have 3 questions in relation to that. Firstly, at what stage and under what authority was the transition made from a one-line budget item into an active project that had already been rejected in the South Beach Place Plan? Secondly, why were the community and apparently elected councillors excluded from this? And thirdly, what assessment was made of the amenity and related consequences of removing substantial areas of informal use green space from the reserve, especially when so much has already been lost in association with the change rooms landscaping? Further, in tonight's agenda, there is a review of the local planning scheme item, which appears to start by excluding the general community from setting the approach for the review. And I quote, the city has not yet carried out any consultation as part of the initial review process, but has been compiling a list of identified issues raised by landowners or city officers. Consultation with stakeholders within the city centre has been carried out as part of the city plan, and the scheme review will build off this ongoing work. Now, it does go on to say that city officers are preparing a process to engage the community and other stakeholders early in the pre-drafting stage, but I fear this very much puts the community in a reactive situation rather than being able to contribute to the development of the overall direction. And I note that the Strategic Community Plan calls for a contemporary planning framework that considers the changing needs of our community. If we really want to achieve this, surely we should start with a clean slate, with those who have a long-term interest in Fremantle, that is the community, rather than simply organisational and vested interest problems with what we already have in the planning scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's going to be a few questions on South Beach car park, so it might be, if it's all right with the officers, best to hear them all and then respond to the items that come up in them all together. Is that happy with that? Okay. Next speaker is Charles Leman.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I'm speaking on behalf of a group of local residents, ratepayers, business owners and beachgoers concerned at what we consider a lack of due process in proceeding with the South Beach car park extensions that were not part of the original South Beach Place Plan. Before outlining our concerns, we would like to congratulate Council on their commitment to increasing the tree canopy within the city and adopting a tree retention policy for residential properties. In particular, the plantings along Marine Terrace towards South Beach have transformed that former barren landscape. Unfortunately, the South Beach car park extensions appear to be completely at odds with these greening initiatives, with precious cooling grass areas and native vegetation removed, replaced by hot bitumen and concrete, and increased traffic congestion. Observing these works has been a wake-up call for us, as we don't recall any notice of a public consultation process or community engagement in relation to these significant changes to the approved place plan. It appears we're not alone, as even contacted local councillors were also not engaged in the decision process. We seek answers to the following questions. 1. Can Council outline exactly what community engagement was undertaken as part of the public consultation process for these car park extensions? 2. Can Council review this process, determine whether there were any failings, and if so, how community engagement may be better undertaken and communicated with future similar projects? 3. What is the estimated financial cost to ratepayers of these works? 4. Were any alternative transport options considered to provide community access without creating environmental damage, increased car traffic, and potential bottleneck congestion at the southern end of the reserve? 5. Does Council have a detailed landscaping plan for mitigating the negative environmental impacts of these works, including planting shade trees in and or around the parking areas? 6. Can Council commit to improving communication so the community is actively informed of any design and development plans for neighbouring Little Dog Beach? 7. Finally, can a meeting be scheduled with the project design engineer or appropriate officers to discuss these issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And on the same issue, Rupert McCracken. Oh, sorry, I skipped over Inika, but I'll come back.
Thanks, Mayor, councillors. I sent an email to the Mayor and some of the South Beach councillors, I guess I'd call them, and I did have an answer today from Graham. Thank you, Graham. It seems to me that, if I paraphrase what I know, is that we had a place plan consultation process which we contributed to, and I think that was a great process. And after a couple of iterations and a long period of time, it was adopted, approved by council for implementation. Somewhere alongside that, the residents, I think opposite Wilson Park, weren't happy with the state of affairs down there, with the amount of traffic, dust, headlights in their windows, whatever. And obviously they have made representations to council, which is another good thing, is that, you know, the council's had some reaction to their complaints, and part of that is to build some additional parking at South Beach. To me, the failure is, I think Charlie was saying the same thing, was that the process has gone from a consultation plan, South Beach Place Plan, which was approved, adopted. Somewhere in there, there's a bullet point or a paragraph that says review parking, but somehow that review parking has changed from review and implement without any further feedback or consultation to the consultees before the work is committed. So our ratepayer funds are going out to something, providing parking for, I don't know who, without us being consulted. So had that been part of the original consultative process, and that was the end result of that consultative process, well and good, but it doesn't, it seems a couple of steps have been missed out. So, while I've got a minute, my other point I'd like to raise is getting to South Beach is dangerous. Try crossing South Terrace on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. It is dangerous. Cars are flying along there. The utes are all got their wheelbases wider than the speed bumps. They just fly through. We haven't got any safe crossing of South Terrace except for at South Street. And the same goes for Marine Terrace at Scott Street and at Capo d'Orlando. They're the only walk signals. So mothers, children, kids trying to get to the beach from Greater South Fremantle, they have to run a risk crossing the road. Please, can you do something about it? Thank you.
Thank you. And Inika Rabos? I hope I've said that in some version of correct.
I would echo what the three gentlemen have just talked about the car park. Sorry, can you hear me? Actually, that sounds horrible, as a resident right beside South Beach, I know that I'm one of 75 people that were not consulted at all, so there was no initial consultation for us. The first we knew about it was the week prior to the construction work starting. We've asked on numerous occasions for copies, because we have not been part of the consultation process, for copies of the safety assessments, not just for construction, but for the actual operation of the facility for these parking spaces, what that was going to do in terms of congestion over the railway lines, interaction with public and the park users. We've also asked for copies of the environmental impact assessment. Neither of these documents have been forthcoming. We have particular concerns. We have signs up all over where we live about the blue-tongued lizards that are down there, and they live in that little habitat, that bushland over the other side of the road, right beside the railway track. And unfortunately today, I think they started removing the scrub. So we're just aghast at the lack of consultation. I mean, zero consultation. And concerned about was any environmental or safety assessment done for the works that are now being undertaken. I think that's probably about it. Thank you.
Thanks. Inika, is it correct that you'd be in the islands or that area?
Yes, so we're
Yeah,
actually we're actually the closest parties impacted by the building works, but unfortunately because we're just on the boundary of South Fremantle, we're classed as North Coogee. So I am expecting that has contributed to the fact that we haven't been consulted, but I would imagine that all good planning law requires that you consult any stakeholders that are in any way adversely impacted by the work. So the fact our postcode is not South Fremantle, I think is academic, a moot point.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other speakers on the South Beach parking? Because I'll then go to the Director of Infrastructure to respond to the parking questions. And I think the only other one in there that I was separate to that was the crossing of South Terrace, which he may also be able to address. Over to you, Graham.
Thank you, through the chair. I suppose there's quite a few questions there. I know a lot of you have written in, and I've responded to numerous emails in respect to this, so I'll apologise up front if I repeat myself in any aspect of that. But I think, firstly, I would acknowledge, in terms of the works notification letters that went out, we did do them to local residents and omitted to send them to the island. So I think I've acknowledged that, and that's something that we'll look to improve as we move forward. In respect to winding back, if we just look at the place plan and the consultation exercise that did take place, it was quite extensive and it was over quite a long period of time. The place plan was a really important piece of work for us, and it spelt out how we dealt with that area. A lot of focus was on the change room and the landscape and access and pedestrian accessibility in and around that area. And parking was discussed, and it was recognised there were parking pressures. I think if you look at some of the drawings, you'll see that was sort of an indication that something might move towards the north end of the car park, but I accept it wasn't articulated very clearly anything in the south, although it did say we may need to come back and review that. And as Rupert touched on, following that, following us moving forward with the adoption of the place plan and moving into the works for the change room facilities, we were approached by the residents around Wilson Park who were pretty desperate in respect to the degradation of Wilson Park, the damage, the parking, the issues that arise from that, again, as Rupert touched on. And we committed to try and have a look at that and resolve that. And we did resolve, as a result of those negotiations, to move more quickly. Bearing in mind, there's a lot of work going on at South Beach, and what we wanted to try and do was get everything done at the same time and not be coming back a year later to start works again. So we brought it forward. We allocated money in the 24-25 budget for the car park. It was discussed through council and agreed to do additional car parking at South Beach, north and south. That was adopted, and we then carried that money forward into this financial year to tag it on to the end of the construction works for the change rooms and the landscape project. So again, if there are ways that we can do that better, we will learn from that and we'll take that on board. So thank you for your comments in respect to that. The designs that we had initially gave us much more parking than we've currently got. We've received feedback along the way in terms of the impact on the reserve and concerns about the loss of trees. We've revised those designs twice now to try and mitigate that. And the solution that we're now progressing with is significantly better, particularly on the eastern side in respect to the impact on the bushland. So we think we've come to a compromise solution and improve the situation. I would say we have done design reviews. We are designing to Australian standards. We do consider safety and traffic flow and pedestrian safety. In terms of clearance, permits and environmental health, we engage with DEWA. So we do a pre-assessment when we're looking at these works, and we've been advised that we don't need a clearance permit because of the nature of the works and it being in a road reserve. We're not changing traffic flow, we're not increasing density, there's no traffic impact assessment, we're just providing additional car parking. So there's quite a lot going on in that area. We've received your feedback and we acknowledge that and we thank you for taking the time to do that. But as things stand, we are progressive with the works as they are mapped out and we appreciate you taking the time to give us your feedback.
Can I just bring you to Crossing South Terrace as well?
Sorry, yep. There is a project in this financial year as well for pedestrian improvements in and around the roundabout at Douro Road and South Terrace. We have a number of projects along South Terrace to improve pedestrian amenity. It's not one of the 6 nodes that we've talked about. This is actually focused on the roundabout. I think we've got a significant amount of funding with joined together a resurfacing programme and looking at the way the roundabout functions, pedestrian accessibility and the link into Marine Terrace and the connection to South Beach as well. So that should be coming out to consultation very, very soon as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. And the only thing I would add is that we have written today to the Mayor of Cockburn as well to make sure that we've got open lines of communication on this issue, particularly looking at access to the islands being, potentially also available from the south, because it does seem surprising that there is only one way in and out of that development. It's obviously not something we can control from our side of the border, but we want to work with Cockburn on that, and more broadly on issues of parking in the area, because there's very little parking as you go south of South Beach. And it is a very popular regional beach. So we do want to work with Cockburn on that. We've written to them today and we expect to hear back soon. Okay, back to my run sheet. The only other speaker I think I have on a general item is David Parker.
Thanks very much, Mayor and councillors. I'm not going to repeat anything that I said in my registration because it's before you and I understand it's been distributed to everybody and it's quite extensive. But I just want to highlight some points that have arisen from it. The first one is that there's a threshold issue of the city seeming to have minimised the ability of people to contact it in any meaningful way. There is not a single email or phone number of an officer on the website apart from the info and the so-called customer relations officers' numbers. No officers of the council have their numbers or their emails on the website. In my view, they should. And calls should be able to be made to the right officer, and any messages should be promptly responded to. I left a number of messages through the customer relations officers because they wouldn't put me through, but nobody ever responded to those messages until I got a lot of calls yesterday once I announced that I would be coming here. The customer relations officers do not appear to have the right or the training to either deal with questions that are put to them or to route them through to the appropriate people. In fact, they seem to believe that it is part of their task to protect officers from having to field phone calls themselves. At either the council or officer level, I don't know which, the whole question of the changeover in the West End on bin collection has been handled very poorly with zero consultation, and especially since there was a policy announced when the FOGO was introduced a few years ago that it would not be introduced into the West End and that it would not be without consultation with individual apartment complexes introduced into apartments either. Now, that hasn't changed. We haven't seen anything about that, but it appears that the introduction of the outsourcing of commercial cleaning has led to this. None of the explanations that I received during the process of trying to find out what was going on, none of them involved FOGO. They all simply said you're going to have to like it or lump it. You've got bi-weekly for the yellow bins, which we understand and accept, and you're going to have bi-weekly for your general waste as well. That was the initial comments that I was made. Yesterday, for the first time, I was told by the department concerned that we could become part of FOGO, and that is certainly better than was what was being offered before. But there are still people I know in the West End, including my neighbour, who are getting weekly collections of general waste. Number 14, Phillimore Street is getting its general collection, for example. We're number 10 to 12. The trucks that apparently, according to Mr. Tyson, don't exist, pass our bins in order to collect the neighbours' bins. So I don't see why that is a problem. But I don't have a personal problem with FOGO. What I have is a personal problem with not collecting general waste on a weekly basis, because general waste includes a lot of things that are inherently smelly and inherently unsafe. There are very big signs, for example, on the FOGO bins that I've checked as I've walked around that say you shouldn't put nappies, children's nappies, babies' nappies into them. I understand why that's the case from a FOGO point of view, but those things have to therefore go in the general waste. If the general waste is then hanging around for 2 weeks instead of 1 week, then especially in summer, not perhaps at this time of the year, then there's that is going to be a major problem, and it could be a problem as well, especially with a lot of people doing bin dipping and putting things in bins and in this area of Fremantle. There are a lot of people around who have strange ways they think that bins should operate. And according to Mr. Tyson, who wrote to me yesterday, you no longer have the capacity in-house to collect general waste, either in terms of vehicles or in terms of people. And therefore it was clearly a design factor in the mandated outsourcing of commercial waste collection, but was never raised as such. From what I understand, it was never raised in the publicity about the commercial outsourcing. I've been told by councillors here that it was never discussed here at council. Council were unaware that it would have this consequential impact. So it seems to me that there's been a major issue of communication, not only as between council and the city and people like myself, and it's not just me, I've got people in Cliff Street, people all around who've raised this with me, but between the council and its officers.
That is taking us to 3 minutes and a bit. So perhaps if you could conclude, that would be excellent.
Yep, I'll conclude, but one of the concerns that I have is that FOGO is supposed to be an environmental program, and I have every sympathy with that, and I'm happy to do FOGO, be a good sort, as the thing says, but there are a lot of people who don't. And if what they leave in the general waste or put in the general waste, or have to put in the general waste because there's nowhere else for it, is unhealthy, then that's not something that is good for the city or good for the city's reputation. And there's been no discussion about that at all that I can see. I sent you in the documentation an article from The Guardian about Teesside in the UK, which has got an infestation of rats. And apparently it's a global problem, and it's largely put down to councils scrimping and saving on waste collection. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go to the Director of Infrastructure on the waste issues and then the CEO on the customer service issues. So.
Thank you, through the chair. I think initially I'd just separate the discussion of commercial waste and Forgo and the 3-bin rollout. They did change at the same time, but they didn't change necessarily for the same reasons. In terms of 3-bin Forgo, it's always been our intention to roll that out as far as possible. We started in 2019 with residential properties, typically outside the CBD because they were easiest. We established that and developed an approach with the view to then moving into the CBD in phases and try to get as many people onto the 3-bin system as possible. The change in July did coincide with some changes that we made to our fleet. We did the commercial waste change, and we also then moved to move more CBD residential properties to the 3-bin system at the same time as well. And that's why we downsized the fleet, because we weren't as involved in the old 2-bin system. So it's been...
I can't do interaction with the gallery, I'm sorry.
There was a really good, the waste education team is actually very, very proactive. So I'll certainly follow up and find out what might have gone wrong in your situation. But there was a lot of comms gone out with respect to this, an enormous amount of comms. And the team have been out, I think, just in relation to this transition, have made nearly 1,000 visits to properties in respect to how the changes are going to affect them and what we need to do. So we'll have a look at that and see if there are things that we've missed. But in respect to, I understand that you've talked to Tyson, the manager of Waste and Fleet, and he's changed your red bin and has offered you a Forgo bin as well, which is really what you should be using for your putrescible waste. Not the red bin. Waste education is important. We do need to keep getting out to people and telling them what not to put in the red bin and what to put in the green bin. But it is a bit of a challenge. In respect to your neighbours, I did follow this up with Tyson because you mentioned a few addresses. The ones that you referenced on Nairn Street are actually transferring across to Forgo or have already. The issue with 14 Phillimore is it's actually a 20-unit complex, and it is more difficult to transition from a logistical point of view. They've got lifts, etc. So we're transferring as much as we can, but sometimes it's a little bit more difficult and it takes us a little bit more time, particularly with larger multiple unit dwellings, because we've got to educate and make sure that people are doing the right thing. But thank you for coming in and thank you for your feedback.
Thank you, Graham. And on the customer service aspects?
Thanks, through the chair. Appreciate that sometimes it's difficult to get into the organisation, and I appreciate sometimes it's difficult to get a response. In fact, Council have made it a performance indicator for me for this year to correct some of the customer service challenges in the organisation. And I can assure you that's now one of the highest priorities being undertaken.
Thank you. All right. I think that takes us to the end of general questions, if I'm not mistaken. So the remainder of the questions are on planning items. As far as I understand, we've got people in the gallery for the planning item 1, the South Terrace development. I believe we've got the proponents here who were happy to answer questions. And then planning item 9. So my proposal would be that we do those two first and then come to the remainder of the items. So did you wish to speak to the planning item 1 prior to debate, or just open it up for questions? Councillors, did anyone have any questions for the proponents on the first planning item? Yes. Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks, yeah.
Oh, hang on, I did skip over a whole bunch of stuff just then, didn't I?
yeah.
That's why you guys are giving me funny looks. That was it, right? Thank you. It's like Chinese whispers here. Thank you for pulling me up on that. I will go through the remainder of the preliminaries and then we will get to your planning item. Apologies, people will have a little bit longer to think of questions for you. Are there any petitions tonight? Nope. Deputations? Presentations? We'll move to confirm the minutes of the last meeting. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Moughlin and a seconder, Councillor Kamada. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Is there any elected member communication? Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Thanks. Two. The first is a clarification, if I'm allowed, on the public questions that were in relation to the South Beach parking, because I feel that there were a couple that weren't answered. So I'm just raising that as hopefully we can get them
Perhaps I
sorted.
can check whether they might be answered in the minutes next time. I
Yep.
think they were all captured.
Great.
Yep.
And the second, which I said to Councillor Graham may frustrate him because it's not entirely what we deal with normally, but I wanted to bring it up today because I received an email from a resident. I believe we may have all received an email from Janet Parker this week around the invitation that I certainly received in my inbox, and I'm assuming others did too, to a conference about anti-Semitism, the local government conference to anti-Semitism. And I hadn't really considered that I would bring this to an OCM. It's a kind of personal invite that came into our inbox, but I do feel that it is important in the times that we are to note I guess this was my personal response to that invitation, which the City of the Gold Coast, they have put on a local government conference to combat anti-Semitism as the title. And while I share the commitment to combating hate and discrimination in all its forms and recognise the importance of addressing anti-Semitism within our communities, after reviewing the conference details, it became kind of concerning about the framing and the scope of the event. When you look through the event details, the current humanitarian crisis that is happening in Gaza is not mentioned once. The funders are linked with very pro-Israeli positions, and the conference really fails to acknowledge the reality of the awful and kind of dystopian apocalyptic reality that we're seeing. And I think, again, it's not something that we are going to deal with very much in the city of Fremantle, but I think it's important if other local governments are inviting us to be involved on such matters to be clear that the Fremantle that I want to be helping to contribute to is not one that's going to look beyond the reality and instead acknowledge what is actually happening, because it's important and essential to simultaneously fight for, in this case, an end to the ongoing genocide against Palestinians, whilst also opposing hate and discrimination within our communities. True justice can't occur unless we acknowledge all instances of hate within our community, which I think the City of Fremantle does well with reconciliation. And so I just wanted to note that on the record tonight to say that I received that invitation and I sent that feedback, because that's certainly not the kind of Fremantle that I wish to contribute to.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson-Wong. And I also declined that on behalf of the position of Mayor. I don't think it was appropriate at all. The item I wanted to speak about was just a ceremony that took place on the 5th of August, leading up to the 8th of August, which of course was the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. And a couple of councillors, Councillor Archibald, Deputy Mayor Archibald, and Councillor Sullivan were able to be there, and I know a number of you also were hoping to be there, but it weren't able to be. So the trees that were planted, and they were planted in North Fremantle, were trees grown from seeds from a tree that survived the atomic bomb attack on the Japanese city of Hiroshima in 1945. And they were gifted to the city in 2014 through the Mayors for Peace initiative as a lasting symbol of peace and resilience. And just take a moment to reflect on Mayors for Peace and the role that Mayor Pettit played in that, and Councillor Archibald has taken on more recently. It's an international organisation of cities dedicated to the promotion of peace and nuclear disarmament. And we joined Mayors for Peace in 2004. So we were gifted these seeds. We grew these seeds through to trees. In August 2020, a number of us were, I think, in the room were there. They were planted at Fremantle's Peace Grove at Dick Lawrence Reserve in Beaconsfield. But 18 months later, all 4 trees were sawn in half in a very senseless act of vandalism. So they're resilient trees, and our Parks team were confident that they could be nursed back to health, and they've spent the time since then doing that with the help of the City of South Perth Nursery to give those those trees another chance at life. And they're now looking very healthy. It's winter, so they haven't got any leaves on them, but they've grown and they're doing well. And on the 5th of August, we planted them out at Gordon Dedman Reserve, which is the reserve adjoining the North Freo Bolo and North Freo Social Farm. And we did so with Mr. Daisuke Hasegawa, who is the Deputy Consul General of Japan, who gave a pretty moving speech about the importance of human connection as the bedrock of peace on the 80th anniversary. You know, he pointed out Japan remains the only nation in history to have suffered the horrors of nuclear war, but collectively as a human society, it's our responsibility to ensure the atrocities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are never forgotten. They are really special trees, and it was lovely to have North Freo Primary School kids there as part of the planting, because they'll be the ongoing custodians, we hope, of the good health and long life of these trees. They're considered the oldest trees on the planet, with fossils dating back to 270 million years. And I know the Parks team did a really good job of researching which soil, which location was going to be the best for them. So we're very confident that they will do really well over there in North Freo. And I think the community there are really excited to have another thing in this little reserve that really makes it a very special place and a real place of community. So as spring arrives, and especially in autumn when the leaves go yellow, we invite everyone to spend a moment of reflection with those really important trees. All right. Was there any other elected member communication? Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. Just further to that, and I thank the Mayor for the comments that were made about the event on the 5th of August, and it really was a great event. And I'm very thankful that the staff, I know that our Manager of Governance was hustling up the staff to make sure the trees got in on time. So it was a very good event. I also attended the annual event that the City of Cockburn hold each year, and that was also attended by the Consul General, and the former Mayor, Brad Pettit, came along, and so we chatted about the trees, and he was obviously very pleased that they have now found a home again. So it was a very warm event, and prior to all of that, in July I think it was, I also attended, as part of the 80th anniversary of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the exhibition that was held up at the Holmes Court Gallery. And likewise, many of the same people were there, but it really was quite an extraordinary exhibition acknowledging what had happened those many years ago. So I just want to add that to the Mayor's comments, because I think it's been quite an important year in raising the profile of the issues surrounding nuclear weapons and their capacity for destruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. Okay, if there's nothing further, we'll do what I attempted to do before and get into the agenda. So questions on the first planning item for the proponents. I think Councillor Sullivan, you had one, and then Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I was just noting the possible amendments that are going to be made to the item, particularly it was already flagged in the officer's recommendation regarding the allocation of space within the development for the bin stores. I'm just wondering if you have any response to that, whether that's something that you're going to be able to accommodate within the development in a way that doesn't end up with the bins out on the street all the time, as some of your neighbours over the road might tend to do.
I'll invite you up to the microphone if you are able to respond. Thanks.
They will be placed behind the garages in clear access to the kitchen.
In the courtyard behind the garages,
That's
or
correct,
just at the
yes.
back of the garage?
Yes.
Yeah. It does sound like the officers are going to ask that you have separate spaces for the commercial one, but I'm sure that can be handled. The other one I just wanted to ask is, and I don't have a particular issue at all with whether or not these buildings are going to be used for short stay or as a house. I don't have an issue with that at all. But I do question if they are going to be ultimately or potentially used for Airbnb, the bedrooms or the like, that the requirements for those in terms of noise separation and the like between rooms is more strict. So I'm just wondering, are you aware that you might need to build flexibility into the building to be able to use it in multiple different ways?
Yeah, certainly. With Matt's help, I designed the building myself. I'm 46 years old and I have a 4 and a 6-year-old, 2 daughters. I figured that the proximity to the house, to our amazing place, the beach, the nightlife, universities, that my daughters probably will never leave. And the whole idea is that we can have larger private spaces. The bedrooms, you might note, are slightly bigger than normal, and that is so that perhaps in my 60s I may get some peace.
Councillor Williamson-Wong, did you have a question as well?
Thanks. A couple, and I'd flag them with Matt as he walked in tonight. I just thought it would be good to share the questions that I had with other elected members. Two, around the safety and the security once this is built. There's, it's obviously set back on the right-hand side with the kind of walkway down on the right-hand side. So I'm wondering, once that's built, is there a plan for how that will be secured or?
Gate.
So there will be a gate. Okay,
Absolutely.
that's not indicated. And the second one is is around the walkway, which is labelled the gallery on the plans. Is it the expectation when the employees for the shop arrive to work, for example, that they will park their cars and then walk out of the garage and into the shop, or will they be accessing the shop through the walkway?
The walkway is a private walkway to our home.
Okay, so that will be secured.
By a front door.
Yeah, okay. Because the doors go from the garage into that walkway as well. So that, was just a question that I had. And I guess, the plans are here, so it's fine. But when I was reading them, I guess my flag was that front door is in that alcove, which does obviously present itself as a space for people to hang out when things are closed. So I wondered if there was thought around that.
Sorry, yeah, we have spoken about that. We will more than likely put a gate. I figured safety for my daughters as well.
Yeah.
So we'll probably have some form of access to then the front door.
Yes, okay, great. Those were my main questions, I guess, also for other elected members who maybe, I had kind of queried why you wouldn't put the shop on the other side and keep the garage aligned with the house. And Matt and I discussed the reason being it better aligns with the parking out the front, and there's also a power pole and other infrastructure that's in the way there. Yeah.
There was a couple of reasons too, and I think I've spent a lot of time sitting on that piece of land, and I don't know a hell of a lot about what the my neighbour is able to do on the corner, but I do know that a corner block tends to have a little bit of a different planning law, and I figured that by future-proofing, we would put our family space to the south and push the house to the north, because if they ever went 3 stories next door or it went more commercial, we can simply just turn ourselves to it instead of being shadowed into our backyard. I guess every corner of that has been a vision, and I've really tried to think about everything. Myself and my wife are extremely excited to live here, and we have returned from over east, and I've tried to turn what is a semi-commercial space into a very warm and functional home, as well as, I guess, utilise the commercial space for what it is and add to the street. I know that it might be questionable to raise a family on a main street, especially with a bar across the road, and I understand that, and we've gone in with our eyes wide open to it all, but I think I've achieved it.
No, I appreciate that. I'm a kid who grew up in South Freo and is finally being kicked out of the family home, so, you know. I've been that person. No, I appreciate that.
All
Thank you.
It doesn't sound like there are any other questions, so we'll go to that item now. So thank you for your help in answering those questions.
Thanks, everybody.
So do we have a mover for the item? Councillor Sullivan, and a seconder? Councillor Lorver. Councillor Sullivan, did you want to open debate?
Thank you. Yeah, look, this is a welcome development, and it does feel, feels like a little bit of Melbourne landing in South Freo, which is always welcome, and having an interesting mix of uses. But I particularly like the adaptability of the house. And that's why I said that even though I had some concerns about trying to make it future-proof in terms of construction, so that it can be used for multiple uses down the track without having to modify it later on, would seem like a really good idea. That's not really a planning issue, that's really a building issue, so I'll leave that one to yourselves. I did also wonder whether it almost felt a little bit squat, and I had wondered whether the applicant was sort of trying to keep it under the 7 metre height, even though the building right next door is, or not right next door, but one door up, it is taller. So I would have been quite comfortable actually looking at a taller facade that actually had a little bit more masonry above the windows. It just felt a little bit light on from a visual point of view. Unfortunately, you can't respond, but the reality will be that if you wanted to do that, I wouldn't object. So if there was an amendment later on in the plan, I'd be more than willing to look at that. It might be the power lines, it might be a range of things, but I'm happy to approve it as it is. They were more sort of suggestions. I do have a couple of amendments which were discussed on Monday in the briefing session, really just to tidy up a few things that we've been persisting with over the last quite a few months now regarding waste management and trying to get the right balance between cultural venues and residential. So they're printed on page 3, so if I can move those amendments, which are really just advice notes, they don't actually have any binding sort of force, they're really just information. So.
Seconded by Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Don't really need to discuss them. I'll respond to any concerns if there are any. Oh, sorry, there was just one change that I wanted to make, if I could, with the seconder's support. In the additional advice note X, in the second sentence, to basically rephrase it so that it says additional planning approvals and construction requirements may be required So it's just adding two little things, the word planning before approvals, and then after the word approvals, adding and construction requirements, because it basically...
Comfortable with that, Councillor Williamson-Wong? Great,
So on that
thanks.
basis, I'm happy to have that go to the vote.
Okay, Councillor Graham?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Just an administrative thing, actually, and it's surprising. I do read things, and I've picked up that in the additional attachments, Councillor Sullivan's amendment to current advice note 8 should actually be amended to advice note 6. If you look at page 32 and then look at page 3, you will see there has been a slight error in the numbering, which is very important, of course.
Sounds like the numbering was done wrong. I'm assured we're going to fix it in the minutes.
Well, I'd certainly hope so, Madam Mayor.
Yes. Test everyone's Roman numerals. If there's nothing further, I'm happy to put that to a vote unless somebody wants to close. Nope, let's put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. So back to the item as amended. Any further discussion? No, we'll put that to... Oh, Councillor Williams-Wong. Hi.
Thanks. Just to be brief, echoing what Councillor Sullivan said, if there was to be an amendment to bring the levels up, especially in line with the South Sydney and South building on the left, I would certainly welcome that. But I appreciate that no, unfortunately not. Sorry. So I know I'm speaking at you and I can't hear a response. But I just thought that I would also note that I think that would be a great outcome.
And you thought you were done. Okay, I will put this on to a vote. All those in favour, and that's unanimous. And so that's an approval tonight, unless we happen to see you again. Excellent. Thank you very much. I will now go to, it's a very South Freo heavy agenda tonight, to item 9, which is the Lefroy Road right-of-way upgrade and dedication. And I've got two speakers on this item, David Barr and Philip Stayskill. So in whichever order you prefer.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, councillors, and thanks to the staff for all the reporting that they've done to date. So, a brief history. Phil Stayskill and myself purchased our properties in South Fremantle in 2009 and built our homes. Along with them, we unknowingly took on responsibility for a laneway used daily by pedestrians, cyclists, dog walkers, and other neighbours for over 15 years, probably more like 100. Research showed it was subdivided in 1902, long before drainage or surface standards existed. Back then, sand was fine as a laneway. Patch repairs over the years have now failed, and it clearly needs a full upgrade. The city's estimate was $170,000, which is far beyond what we as owners can afford to put into the project. Following the city's process in response to the safety and drainage concerns, we followed the city's process for laneway dedication, first gaining 50% support, now pursuing the 75% needed for a special area rate. The officer's report recommends increasing that to 100% consent. We think this is unfair mid-process and would also deter others with laneways if they were to follow the dedication for their laneways in the future, which is a missed opportunity for Fremantle. The burden, we've paid about $25,000 in rates over the last 15 years, plus costly and difficult to obtain insurance for the laneway, while also paying full residential rates. And again, for us, this is not sustainable. The benefits to the Fremantle, if it was to become dedicated, would be improved safety for all users, creating a walkable connection through a whole series of network of laneways, and protecting the heritage buildings through proper drainage, which is currently one of our biggest issues. And also support the opportunity for smart infill. Phil and I, currently with our families, are on 2 lots of 150 square metres, and we have 9 people in total living in that 300 square metres, not together. our proposal is to proceed with the dedication process using the 75% threshold. Have the city consider a contribution of up to 25% with the rest paid by the owners, should we not be able to get 100% people across the line, with a special area rate of over sort of a 10 to 15 year period to make it a palatable increase in rates. And that the council facilitates and educates all the affected parties in a way to really enforce or educate everyone what the benefits would be, rather than rely on us to take that responsibility. But in conclusion, the dedication would mean safer streets, better connections, a fairer cost sharing, and a model for other laneways in the future that the city could consider. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Philip?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd essentially like to echo David's words, but would also like to provide a little context as to how we came to embark on this journey in the first place. So over the past decade, we've worked with adjoining landowners in at different points to try and improve the laneway, from beautifying it to making it safer and more family friendly. Most recently, we discussed some essential repairs to the deteriorating surface and went as far as gathering quotes from local trades. But despite everyone having good intentions, we weren't able to get the level of buy-in that we needed to move forward. So what we've learned from the multiple failed starts, I guess, we've had over the last 15 years is that it seems without a clear framework or structure, it's incredibly hard to get multiple private owners aligned, especially over something like shared infrastructure. So that's when we ultimately decided to pursue the formal dedication process. And it's the result of years of trying to work together informally and hitting the limits of what we could achieve privately, I guess. So we're essentially asking the city to partner with us and not to take on the full cost, but to support a process that enables a fair and sustainable solution. As identified by David, we've followed the city's own guidelines in good faith, reaching 50% support initially and now working towards 75. However, even this 75 has become a difficult prospect based on the city's recent estimate. So now with the recommendation to increase this to 100% uptake, essentially as a de-risking process for the city, we feel it's going to be near impossible to achieve. We feel it kind of sets us up to fail and sends a strong message about to the community, other groups that might seek similar outcomes in future. So this laneway, we feel, already serves the broader community. It's used every day by pedestrians, cyclists, families, as David has said. It connects our neighbourhood and it's capable of supporting really important infill if this were to take place, the dedication. Formalising it through this process and shared funding we feel would benefit Fremantle, not just us as the owners. So we sincerely hope that when you meet again, following community consultation, that you'll agree to stand by the original 75% threshold and consider partnering with us to recognise the sort of greater public benefit of this system of laneways. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Philip. Were there any questions for David and Philip? Nope. Okay. So we'll go to the item. Did somebody want to move this item? Councillor Williamson-Wong and seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thanks. I thought Phil was going to start with the context that he and Dave used to work for Mum and Dad back in the day, you know? I thought we were going to go all the way back to that context. No, I am excited to see this, and I think it's a good test of our council policy around dedicating laneways because, as we know, there are many that we kind of need to figure out a strategy with, and this can be the test case for that. And as Phil and Dave pointed out, you know, we are saying that we want really good infill developments and making sure that our laneways can be, you know, become dedicated roadways is a big part of that because that's the supporting infrastructure. And so I hope that, yeah, staff and officers really, we can make sure that the consultation and the process from here is one that's quite collaborative because, you know, if we don't get this one right, then we might fail on all of them or it will be harder to come back from. So I am excited to see this test case evolve and go from there.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson-Wong. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thank you. This is one of those issues that has always been difficult for the City of Fremantle. These laneways have been discussed for, decades now, and it would be nice to see one finally get to some level of resolution. But as was pointed out, it is really, really challenging to get everybody aligned. And so through emails and conversation this week, I've been really emphasising the importance that we carry out informed consultation with all of the affected parties. I'm not yet even clear in my mind from the information that's provided, for example, which of the actual properties have legal right of carriageway over that laneway. I'm not yet clear in my understanding whether or not we would be applying the information, the potential special area rate to the strata titles. Some of the strata titled properties, only one part of the strata actually connects to the laneway, so there's questions there. So I would, and there's also on the flip side, the benefit question as well. In other words, what are the planning regs around the opportunities that exist for people to actually make more use of the right-of-way? So properties that, say, face Chester Street or the like, what is their development potential? And is there something that council should be looking at to improve that potential if the laneway is dedicated? In other words, is there anything we can do to help incentivise support from that small cohort of owners to jump on board with this? So the options for that, to me, are important. And I think if we've learned anything about consultation, even in the last few weeks, informed consultation is really important. I do not want us to go out there and ask general questions that we might get a whole bunch of just, well, look, I don't really know what that means. So I'll just say no, because no is easier than yes. We know that. Everybody knows that through any form of simple questioning. No is always easier than yes. So if we can make sure that before we actually start collecting responses, that we do genuine, informed consultation and conversation with all of the affected, all of the potentially joined together landowners, I would very, very much appreciate that. We don't need to change the recommendation, but I am putting that out there, and I wanted to say that here publicly because I don't want this coming back going, oh, we got a lot of no's because no one really knew what was going on. We just got that through the TUP. We got a lot of people that were really like, what the hell is this? Because we didn't necessarily have all of our communication ready, and it wasn't available for people to really understand an issue fully enough to actually go, oh, actually, that's not such a bad idea. So it is important that we get it right. There is a minor amendment with the Mayor's indulgence in part 2 to, instead of saying for final reviews, just to say for further review. That was a wording change suggested by staff, just to highlight that actually our part of the conversation is probably going to need to be reasonably fluid as well. So if I can move that amendment.
Sure. Do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Williamson-Wong. Any discussion on that amendment? Put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. So back to the item as amended. I wanted to ask a question of staff in regard to the 100% and where that came from. I guess I'm always surprised to see 100% as a threshold for anything, given it's very, very hard to achieve, even just contacting 100% of people in a consultation. So I don't know who can respond to that one. Is that manager or director?
I'll give that a go through the chair. The policy does say 75%, and I think when we bring it back to council, that needs to be looked at. The 100% was an internal conversation that we had, which is about de-risking the whole financial side of it. I don't think it necessarily needs to be a game changer, and if we were to come back with a recommendation for something less, we would just point out what those potential financial risks may be that the city continues to carry.
Thank you. Was there further conversation on the item? Nope. I mean, I guess bearing in mind that it is to send it out to consultation, I'm comfortable with it, but I agree with Councillor Sullivan that it's not a sort of letter in the letterbox drop consultation. I think we have such an opportunity here to do this properly and well with some people who are really committed to doing it on the ground. We have been through Delamere Lane. I know there's lanes in Hilton. I know, like, there are lanes everywhere that would really benefit from us having a process that we can go through, you know, in a considered, community-orientated way. And as Councillor Sullivan said, it would be great if there was also some carrot at the end of it where we're able to say, like, we can contribute something if the community is able to come together and come up with a resolution. And I know laneway ownership is different in every single circumstance, so we won't even start to get in that. But I think if we can get a process together through this example, it's going to be really applicable to a number of other places throughout the city. So, yeah, I'm really keen, like Councillor Sullivan said, that we do the deep dive on the consultation. And to me, that looks like sitting with people, sitting around with a group of people, answering the questions, doing it in plain English, having the drawings there, having other examples of where this has been done so that people can really unpack that in a way as you know, has been discussed as now with TUP, when we're able to zoom in on people's addresses and say, this is exactly what it means for you. The consultation's been much more productive. So I guess we look forward to this coming back to us after that's occurred. I'll put it to a vote if there's nothing further. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Excellent. Well, we'll be seeing some more of you, I imagine. All right, councillors, I am going to look at the rest of the agenda. See item 2. 5, 6, 7 and 8. Did anyone want to talk about any of those C items? 2, 5, 6, 7 and 8. I'm hearing a no, so I might move C items 2, 5, 6, 7 and 8 on block, and seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. I note that Councillor Williamson Wong is not able to be in the room for C item 4, so I'll move that to the end of the agenda. That's all right with everyone. Please remind me that that's what I did when we get close to the end of the agenda. So C items 10, 11 and 12. Did we have speakers on 10, 11 and 12? I wanted to, yep, which one were you? 10? Yeah, me too. 11 and 12 then? All right, I might move C items 11 and 12 on block as well. Can I have a seconder for that one? Councillor Williamson Wong. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. All right. So let's go to C item 10 then, and then 13, then 14, then back to 4. Okay, C item 10. This is the City Streets Enhancement Strategy. Do I have a mover for that one? Councillor Archibald, and a seconder, Councillor Williamson Wong. Councillor Archibald, did you want to open us up on that one?
No, I'm happy for others to hop into the debate. Thank you.
Councillor Williamson Wong.
Thanks. I just wanted to raise, as this has come through an IEM, and at the IEM I had asked a question about the weighting of the prioritisation of the streets that are in the City Streets Enhancement Strategy. It outlines a number of priority streets within the CBD for works. And my question had been, there are 6 different reasons that streets might be need enhancing. One of them is accessibility, character, functional failure, and a few others. My question was around, can we redo the kind of calculations again to rank accessibility as a higher priority than the other factors? The staff have provided an updated version, and only one street materially has changed within the strategy. And the advice received was that if we wanted accessibility to be a more, brought up higher as the key consideration, then it would change the brief of the whole strategy and do that. So I'm certainly not going to suggest that we do that at this point when the piece of work has been done. There are other pieces of work, like different ways that projects are ranked and accessibility lists. So I just wanted to note that those conversations, I'm sure people have seen them, and that I look forward to this strategy interacting with the other policies that we have, because I personally think that making sure our footpaths and our city is safe for people of, different accessibility and mobility to walk through, to me is a higher priority than the colour of a pavement in comparison to the building that it's next to. And so I hope to see that making sure our CBD is actually accessible, because there are points where it's not. So I look forward to that.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson-Wong. And thanks for raising that. I think it was a good assessment to do to see what level of change would happen if accessibility was the highest criteria. I have to say this one, I think it was commented, we've never had a more local government-y conversation, but it is core business of local government to do work like this. I think it's also a cautionary tale for me to make, I remember going into the last mayoral election and thinking footpaths was like a fairly easy topic. It's straightforward, you just fix them. Obviously it was not obvious at all, in fact. And one of the things that became quite clear, I think, in this whole project is it's not a question of throwing money at it. It's a question of making sure you've got a clear plan and you work to a plan and then you deliver according to that plan. And it's not a plan that one part of the organisation can go off and just write. It's a plan that needs to take into account a whole bunch of engineering stuff, a whole bunch of urban design stuff, and then a whole bunch of economic development and tourism stuff, because some of our worst streets, if they have no pedestrians on them, it's probably not as high a priority as something like High Street, which we know has a number of accessibility issues, or probably the worst offender, the street that goes, the path that goes along the Esplanade, which is, more of a mountain bike track than a footpath. So what this work does is it brings together all of the different parts of the organisation that have an interest in this. It gives us a prioritisation framework so that when we go out and do footpath work, we know we are targeting the most important footpaths that will have the most impact for the most people when we do this work. I think it's also really important because it gives guidance to developers in the city. So when we say, you come in and you muck up one of our footpaths while you're doing a development, then we need you to make it good. Again, having a clear standard where we can say to them, it's this sort of a footpath that we expect you to put in place is really important. So I know it's very local government-y, but I'm really glad we now have this. I'm glad we're replacing the 1999 paving policy, because I think it's possibly a little bit outdated. And I hope it just gives us a framework where we can get on with the job of this. The only one side note I would make, because it's something that I learned along the way, and just for public transparency, there's a whole bunch of other people's infrastructure on our footpaths. I feel pretty strongly about us engaging with the other people and saying, is this defunct telecoms box really necessary right in the middle of this footpath? But it's not up to us what they do with that. Same with the heights of things like the little covers of the various infrastructure that gets put there by Watercorp and goodness knows who else. We can do what we can with the footpath around it, but we also have to really wrangle other stakeholders to try and get a better outcome. So we wish that it were easier, but here we are. Anyway, should we put this one to a vote? All those in favour? And that's unanimous. All right. So I think we're going over the page now to the Community Emissions Reductions Actions, the working group report. Councillor Williamson-Wong, I note that you've got an alt motion here. As chair of that working group, I think it would be fine for you to move your alternative motion if you wanted to. Sorry, it's written differently on my run sheet, so amendments is fine as well. We will move it and then move the amendments. Cool. So, Councillor Williamson-Wong, did you want to move that? And a seconder for that one, Councillor Kamada. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. In a very exciting, no, I don't know if it's exciting, but I realised, it's actually not that exciting, that a whole year ago it was the council meeting around my birthday and we introduced the Community Emissions Working Group, and I'll just let everyone know again that it was my birthday yesterday, and here we are, endorsing the actions. So that's a fun little full circle in a whole year. I am excited that these actions have been brought forward, and the process to get here has been very interesting. I think you'll see in the report, people who aren't members of the working group, you'll note there's some data there from Snapshot Climate, which is a really interesting tool that highlights exactly where the emissions come from, and surprisingly and not surprisingly, very few of them are from our households. And I think what that reminded me is that our priority as the local government is also to help, or I guess to gather the information from the other key players within our local government area, one of which being the port, and others which have not been identified as the priorities for the next 12 months, but being schools, retail and other kind of business and industry who are the biggest emitters, because whilst we may not be able to have the most direct influence over them, we do have a role to play in bringing all of the information together, because I think most people are working towards some kind of emissions reduction, so making sure that everyone knows what everyone else is doing and what we might be able to assist with is really useful. As Mayor Fitzharding flagged, I do have some amendments up. I had unfortunately not seen the wording of these before it was in the agenda, so I have prepared some amendments to clarify what I believe the intent is behind each action. And I guess to put in context, these priority actions, as the reports or as the item says, are for implementation in 25-26. The intention behind that is that there will be an action plan at some point, or that the priority actions are reviewed every 12 years. It's a kind of flexible living document, and we wanted to make sure that the actions chosen were things that we could achieve. 1A, yes, great. 2A, whichever it is. I've changed that to collaborate with Fremantle Ports to understand its position on reducing emissions, share opportunities it could take, and understand how the City of Fremantle can assist. I think...
I'm just going to second this for you so
sorry.
you can keep talking.
Thank you.
Yep, go on.
I know that the Fremantle Ports are making moves to reduce their emissions, and I felt like collaborate was a better word to put there rather than advocate to. I don't necessarily think we need to go and tell them what they could do. We can make sure that we understand what their position is already. So yes, that's that one. The second one, advocate for creation of a Fremantle free transit zone within, and if it is okay, add in a minor amendment to clarify that that's within the City of Fremantle. I've just taken out the city centre because I think that is somewhat restrictive, and perhaps the free transit zone would do a different linkage. Who knows? And then the 2D is to support our community and existing community groups to electrify everything. I wasn't aware necessarily, but I stand to be corrected, that we had committed to or have the resourcing to really have active partnerships with Rewire Australia or become part of the Electric Communities Network. But we do know that there are existing community groups who are doing that. So I thought that the phrasing changing that to support our community and the existing community groups fitted slightly better. Happy to answer any questions on those amendments if there are any.
Thanks, Councillor Williams-Wong. I was going to suggest a similar thing for point B. I was wondering about sort of the greater Fremantle area, because I wonder if we just sort of, the City of Fremantle boundaries might not make exact sense for a free transit zone in terms of those objectives of getting people out of cars who would otherwise be driving to the city. And you know, the local government area is relevant to us, but it may not be relevant in the same way to the PTA. So I wondered whether you'd consider the greater Fremantle area as potentially casting a wider net or something like that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have an issue with that. The reason for clarifying the City of Fremantle is I guess that's where we might have more of an influence potentially when we're advocating. But yeah, I don't think limiting it to the city centre was really the intention of that point.
I think our intention's the same.
Well, then I think we should stay with the City of Fremantle.
Cool.
Yeah.
And beyond, maybe. All right, Councillor Sullivan, did you wish to speak?
Thanks. Yeah, look, I will support the amendment. But in relation to B, I do have, I guess, an opinion. I mean, I don't have a problem with the idea of a free transit zone. But the reality is we have been down that path a few times. And obviously, technology has changed and it makes it perhaps a little bit easier for the bureaucrats at the state level to at least not be able to use technology as the excuse for not doing a free transit zone. The reality is I think they'll then have to fess up that they don't want to do it, because if we do it here, everybody else will want one. And then the argument for why are we paying for public transport? Why don't we just have free public transport everywhere, which is, of course, the most logical outcome, would be the conversation. So I just, I appreciate we're advocating for it, but I would love to advocate even more loudly for free public transport, as other places in the world are realising that is the best way to tackle these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. I do agree with Councillor Sullivan, but I think in the first instance, going for the City of Fremantle is a really good way to go. And if it may not be the exact boundary of our city, but it can even expand if the state government starts to get interested in the idea as well. I just also wanted to mention that Saul Griffith, who is the main player, part of the Rewire Australia type of discussion, he's come out with a book called The Big Switch, which is a fantastic book all about, it's designed for, ordinary household people who might want to know how they can go about rewiring their house or thinking about what ways to approach the whole issue. So I think using something like this will also be a great opportunity for us to encourage people to find out more about it. And he's obviously knows heaps and heaps about this stuff. And so it's very timely for us that it's come out now. And it'll be great to promote it in the community. Thanks.
Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate some of the comments that have already been said. If we're serious about getting people, out of their cars and alleviating congestion, reducing pollution and all those things, then the more people we get onto public transport, the better. So if we can start with something in Fremantle, Greater Fremantle, I think the intent is there. I think it's really important because, the future is going to be pretty bleak if we don't improve our infrastructure for transport and get people into it.
Thanks, Councillor Kamada. Councillor Lorber.
I guess I'll say my 2 cents on this one as well. I absolutely agree with everything everyone said, and I just want to add that, especially in 2026, when we're staring down the barrel of one of our Swan River bridges being closed, having a free transit zone would be extremely helpful and useful to help mitigate some of the impacts on our city. So absolutely, if we can get on it now, that'd be great.
Thanks. There's no further speakers. I just will take hopefully what I said before as a discussion about the wording, but just a minute to acknowledge Councillor Williamson Wong for the work that she's put into the working group and the consultative process internally that has been run along with the officers to come up with a much longer list of initiatives than this one. I think it's important to know that this is not the full outcome of the working group, that there was a big discussion about a lot of items and a really well-informed discussion and a well-chaired discussion. So thanks, Councillor Williamson Wong, for the work that you've done on the Community Emissions Working Group. And I think in 12 months' time, it'd be great to be sitting down again and understanding what the next cabs off the rank might be in terms of actions. So appreciate that. Cool.
Thank you for those words, Mayor Fitzharding, and hopefully in 12 months, you know, I'll be a whole year older and we will have achieved all these actions and we'll be looking at a whole new list of 4. What a good birthday treat that is every year.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Back to the item. I'll put that one to a vote as amended. All those in favour? And that's unanimous again. Great. Okay, I am just catching up on what is happening with the next one, so bear with me for a minute. We've got the notice of motion on convenience stores from Councillor Lorver, and I understand Councillor Williamson Wong has some amendments to that. So it's, yep. Okay, so Councillor Lorver, over to you. Okay, and do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Williamson Wong. Thanks, Councillor Lorver.
Great. Yeah, I guess this is kind of in response to some of the things that we've all been seeing happen in our city, and it's kind of, I guess, just another example of our current planning scheme maybe not being fit for purpose or delivering what our community might expect. So it's great that we passed item 7 earlier tonight, so we can, we let people know that we're actually going to be taking a look at our scheme holistically and how we can make some improvements in the future. And look, I know someone who smokes tobacco, and we were down near the Norfolk one afternoon and they had left their tobacco at home. So me being a good friend and person, I offered to go and grab them a pack just from across the street. And I wound up going on this really long journey of visiting several of these newly opened convenience stores, trying to find one that would sell me a package of legal tobacco. Because over a half a dozen of them just did not have any. And finally, after about the 3rd or 4th one, I went to and I said, can you just open your cabinet? Because they all have a cabinet. And they opened it up and it was empty. But they pulled out a pouch from their inside of their jacket pocket and said, hey, you can have this. And I think that it's pretty blatant. And I guess we know why that they're there, because a pouch of tobacco there costs $25, where if you buy it legally, it's over $100. So in this cost of living crisis, people are taking advantage of it. And it's not chop. It actually looks like it's in a real package. It's sealed in plastic. It says the brand names on it. So it's very, very sophisticated. So these things are proliferating. I don't think our community wants it. I don't think we want that as part of our city. And the illegal tobacco is just one thing. I don't know if you guys have seen a few of the stores, at least one down on High Street is now also selling machetes. I sent around a picture of that. There's a whole stack of long machetes that they're selling along with serrated knives and things like that. And I just don't feel like that's what we want in our city center. So put this forward to just ask the CEO to report back to us on what we can do, because there are lots of intersecting bits of legislation, and hopefully everyone here does want to do something so we can curb the spread of these stores. So, and I'll just add one other thing. Just in the paper today, or it was reported in the West, and I think on W8 today before our meeting, that the police commissioner is looking at this issue now as well, so looking at beefing up his authority to issue fines, and because I guess the level is way too low right now. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more action there, and that can work its way back into the report. So I'll leave it open for the debate and for some amendments from Councillor Williamson Wong.
All right, Councillor Williamson Wong, did you, as seconder, want to speak now, or?
I'm happy to listen to debate and then move amendments from there.
Okay.
Unless there's no debate, in which point.
There's nobody who's put their name on the list at this stage, so maybe we'll go to the amendments.
Great. Look, it's in the additional documents as an alternative motion because my understanding was really that the nom from Councillor Lorver is seeking information, whereas what I had written was seeking action, and therefore two different intentions and needed to be an alternative motion. But I understand we can move them in as amendments to the item and do some of them, which are...
Yeah,
Well, that's the
can I
tricky-
just clarify this? I agreed with the view that it was an alternative motion for the reasons that you outlined before. So I'm a bit confused about to what extent this is now going to be able to be inserted into the other items. So do you have a clear picture of that in your mind as to which bits of this we're trying to move over? Because it looked difficult to me.
Perhaps we can double check the advice on that, but my understanding was that 4, 5 and 6 might be able to be moved.
Just through the chair, what we have on the table at the moment is Councillor Lorver's nom. We can take sections of Jemima's alternative and add them in. What Councillor Williamson Wong is referring to is 4, 5 and potentially 6. If she wishes to move that, she can do so as an amendment.
Councillor Graham?
Look, yeah, because this is a bit of an informal meeting, this one, compared to the other ones. Look, this is very confusing for elected members. My view would be that we move Councillor Lorver's motion, which has already been put and seconded, and if that gets up, well, that gets up and that's the end of it. If that doesn't get up, then there's the alternative motion of Councillor Williamson Wong. But to sit here now and try and play around with 4, 5 and 6 to make everyone feel warm and fuzzy and happy is, to me, a bit of a nonsense. It's quite simple.
Okay. Look, I think Councillor Williamson Wong, came in with the understanding that she would be able to make some amendments based on her alternative motion and the wording in it. So I guess we're happy to look at those amendments. It's to me, it's fitting them in, and it's more a procedural thing than anything else that I find a little bit challenging here. So, I'm not quite clear on the path forward.
I was just trying to think through.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I think the perspective of the officers is that the first 3 parts, or the first 2 parts especially, of Councillor Williamson Wong are in contradiction to the original notice of motion, where the remaining parts are not. Yep, so the remaining parts could be amendments if council were of a view to look at that. Not necessary though, but if they are of a view to.
Sorry, Councillor Archibald, were you going to
I
speak
thought
on the
that
motion, or?
I thought the mover of the motion was going to make a comment about that particular issue.
All right, so
I feel that parts 4, 5 and 6 would be good to have in any final motion. And I was just really seeking some feedback from Councillor Lorver whether that would be acceptable to him. But really, I mean, the whole thing is we want to raise the profile, get people to give us back information and perhaps do more work ourselves. And out of that, we could get an action list of where we want to head. But
okay, I want to pull us in procedurally because we're debating an alternative motion that's not on the table. If I go to Councillor Lorver, he's going to close the debate, so that's problematic. I think the best thing we can do, even though I think as has been noted, the first parts of these pull in different directions, is for Councillor Williamson Wong to either move amendments or to leave her old motion intact on the table, and we either vote for this one or we vote for Councillor Williamson Wong's alternative motion. So is your preference, Councillor Williamson Wong, that we try and move over sections of your alternative motion to be included in this one? Or is it that we put it as an alternative motion should this one not succeed? I'm sorry, procedurally I just don't really have anywhere else to go unless someone has a light bulb moment.
Well, not to throw another hypothetical. No, that's fine. Look, I would like to see 4, 5 and 6 in whatever we pass tonight. 1, 2 and 3 are really context that either has been provided by Councillor Lover's nom or is not necessarily an action item and not calling for us to do anything but acknowledge the situation. I think we're all very aware of the situation. So I'm very happy to move 4, 5 and 6 as amendments to the current notice of motion to be following points. I understand that point 6 in my alternative motion is something that we haven't done before. So whether people would want that voted on separately.
Maybe we can look to move over 4 and 5 as one amendment.
Sure. I'm looking to move over 4 and 5, please.
And that's seconded by Councillor Lorver.
Thank you, Councillor Lorver.
All right, so on the amendment.
Yes, to clarify, as set out in this alternative motion, I think that the current proliferation of these convenience stores is obviously not working for any part of our CBD, whether that is degrading the streetscape and the amenity or all of the antisocial behaviour that we know accompanies these stores and sits behind them. I also think that not just that they are this type of store. If we had one type of store as frequently as we do anywhere in the city, whatever that store was, we would also be having an issue because the city of Fremantle and our CBD is meant to be a place, and our strategy is really in place to make it a diverse mix of retail and hospitality, and that's not being achieved when one type of store is everywhere. So I also think the city of Fremantle knows that we aren't really going to be the people to pull the lever on this because we simply don't have the control. The control sits with the Retail Tenancies Act, it sits with the Tobacco Products Control Act, and it sits with our local planning scheme, which, as we know from passing the item tonight, will take approximately 6 years to ever come into play. So that is not happening anytime soon. When I was researching and putting together the memo that I sent out, I hadn't realised that the Commercial Tenancy Retail Shops Agreement Act pretty much says that all retail tenancies will have a term of 5 years, and it's almost impossible to kick out a tenant within 5 years because there's just simply no levers to do that within our Act at the moment, which is obviously a flaw when you have people who are, it relies on the terms of the lease itself. Similarly, the Tobacco Products Control Act is lacking a lot of strict penalties and enforcement, specifically around the vapes and things like that, which are often caught by federal legislation. South Australia has just introduced a bunch of reforms to their legislation which have kind of cracked down on these convenience stores, and so that's what this 4 and 5 are kind of asking for, pretty much. Similar reforms to happen. And yeah, as Councillor Lorvan mentioned there, we know that the top police, whatever they want to call it, the Commissioner, is also calling for these. And I know that the City of Fremantle has been already engaging on this issue with the Chamber of Commerce. This is just finalising that we are taking action and we are writing to the relevant ministers and members of Parliament, because that is unfortunately really the only thing we can have direct control over right now with the state of play.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson-Wong. On the amendment, Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. And I suppose thanks to Councillor Williamson-Wong for bringing the amendment and Councillor Love for the original notice of motion.
I'm really brief on this. We can't plan this one away. It's not going to achieve an outcome for us in the sense of planning schemes and the like. We've got an immediate issue that needs to be addressed, and the only way it can be addressed is through enforcement action. And absolutely, the South Australian legislation or the legislative approach goes some way to achieving that, but there's got to be an appetite by both state and federal police to address illegal tobacco products coming in. As Councillor Lorvis spoke to, these are actually off-the-shelf products from other countries that are being imported, and they end up on our docks, whichever way they're coming into the country, and then finding their way through organised crime to stock the shelves, under the shelves, under the counter. And we've seen the horrible consequences, particularly in the East Coast, and now proliferating in Western Australia with firebombing and firearms incidents for people associated with this. And this is something that we don't want in our town. And absolutely, the letters to the Police Minister, local member and Attorney General and Minister for Commerce are vital, and we can't accept just a lame response back from them about not doing anything in regards to this or having their hands tied. The community expects something to be done, not just in Fremantle, but beyond that, and we should be pushing really hard to achieve better outcomes.
Thanks, Councillor Mofflin. As elected members are aware, we've met with the Minister for Police and the Police Commissioner and a representative of the Minister for Health, and I would suggest that the Minister for Health also be on that list because the current regulations are Health Department regulations, and while I think everyone agrees they're woefully inadequate, they are also the only tool that we've got in the toolkit at the moment. So if the mover and seconder were amenable, I'd suggest we put the Minister for Health in that list as well. Yeah. Look, we presented this to the Police Commissioner and the Police Minister as a crisis, and I think what was really useful was, the community's already been really active on this issue, but particularly Ros D'Souza, Citizen of the Year, who'd gone around and mapped all of the convenience stores and written notes about which ones were most concerning, meant that we ended up putting together a map that really showed a crisis in Fremantle, and they were, I think, probably taken aback by seeing it visually presented like that. And we certainly got back the message that they understood why we were concerned and that they were not happy with the penalties as they currently stood. So I think what you're seeing now starting to come through the media is an understanding that the risk associated with this is too great. We spoke about the risk in Fremantle obviously being higher because firebombings in wooden buildings as opposed to concrete kind of tilt-out buildings in the suburbs is a much more serious thing. In the short term, of course, we asked for just increased presence and increased use of the existing regulations, which and the existing restrictions on illicit tobacco, which are held from the Department of Health. But I think, as all the research that Councillor Williamson Wong showed, there are much better ways to regulate this. South Australia is a good example, but New South Wales are also looking at planning reform, not unlike we had with the short-term rental accommodation, where just everybody's planning scheme gets a restriction on a particular type of use. And if that were a quicker way to go, I'm sure we'd love to see that as well. It probably takes action on all of these fronts. So I'm really happy to support the amendment and also to include the Minister for Health in that. On the amendment, did you wish to close on the amendment, Councillor Williams-Wong? Nope, let's put the addition of 4 and 5 to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Cool. So back to the item as amended, and Councillor Williamson-Wong, you flagged you wanted to put 6 in as an amendment as well. So did you want to move that?
Yes, thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Archibald?
Thanks. Look, I have had included point 6 and now hoping to move this across as an amendment because I think you know, well, we've talked about this just being a bunch of letters before when we debated the NOM that I'd brought forward around the Northwest Shelf. And I think it's true. It is, at the end of the day, just a letter following up on, you know, other meetings that we might have had or other pieces of work and advocacy. And the way to add more weight to things is by putting more names on them and by showing that there are a community of people who are holding these ministers to account on this issue. And the issue of the convenience store is something that we have seen a lot of community very upset about. And I guess as a local government, we have the opportunity to be able to raise those concerns with people who have the power, being the relevant ministers in this case. And so to be able to allow community members to add their name to that letter seems like a way to bring them along the journey and to ensure that they understand we're advocating on their behalf. And as I say, similar, it's adding weight to the letter that we send. I have discussed this with staff and happy to be corrected, but it's possible. It's not common. And I know that there are concerns that this might set an annoying precedent going forward, to which my response is, well, let's just test it out. If it fails, it fails. We're not going to know until we try and do it. It might be over the top, but it's not hard to create a form that collects people's names and addresses, you know, to say they're a Fremantle resident. And it's also an opportunity for us to test something new. And I don't see why we wouldn't necessarily do it. Certainly not as something that we're going to do every time, but on this issue particularly, when there are so many people in our community calling out for us to do something about it, to allow them to also be involved with that thing that we do, being sending a letter, seems like the right move.
Councillor Moughlin?
Thanks. I've just got a question for the CEO as to the practicalities of how that works. It seems like there might have been a conversation on that, but we're requesting a letter from the CEO to those people. How to the respective ministers and the like, how does it work, or potentially work with community members adding names to a letter from the CEO?
Through the chair, I'm probably not in favour of this type of way of engaging with the community. I think it's, for want of a better term, a second-hand process to try and get a petition going. I'm not sure how I'd collect anything other than names and addresses, to be fair, and then make it an attachment to the letter. So we could go on My Say and get a bunch of people saying, yeah, we fully endorse and support this. I'm just not sure how we would make it work other than having someone's name and an address. It's not a signature or anything like that. My comment was I think it's a bit over the top and a bit clunky. If you want a petition, have a petition is probably the way I'd put it.
Thanks. Councillor Moughlin?
So I would just add to that potential risk as well in regards to this being the first time it's done and it's only out for 1 week, and say if we get 2 or 3 names added there, does it actually diminish the efforts of putting the letter out there? So I'm most probably erring on the side of, because this is a thought about how we might be able to generate that community input, rather than at this stage being really clear as to how we would do it, most probably erring on the side of not supporting.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin. Councillor Archibald?
Yes, look, I really admire the initiative, but I tend to feel that I would prefer to see the letters go to state government and give the state government the opportunity to respond. And if we really get little traction, then perhaps we could demonstrate that there is a strong view, particularly within the CBD, on how this issue gets managed. So in the first instance, I would prefer to just send the letters and then perhaps rethink how we approach that if we don't get much traction.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. Councillors? Councillor Graham?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, I err on the side of caution on this one. It does seem very clunky. My view is that we're requesting the CEO to write a letter, which he'll write on behalf of the council, which he is writing on behalf of the community of Fremantle anyway. So in essence, every ratepayer in Fremantle is getting the CEO to write here. It'd be better if somebody was to set up a petition, to me, that would say we support the City of Fremantle's stance on this and what they've sent off to the ministers, strongly support it, you know, blah, 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 whatever they want to put down, as a separate letter. And that would get more traction than just having, you know, Frank Mofflin, Jeff Graham, Jenny Archibald's name on the bottom of a letter that, you know, Glenn Dougal sends. You know, that's just my view. And so I won't be supporting that amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, I want to thank Councillor Williamson Wong for some creative efforts here to get our community's voices amplified. I think that's really, really well intended, but I too am going to err on the side of caution on this one because one, it could be a really bad precedent to set in the fact that if there are no names that get added, it would look it would be counterproductive. But also two, the fact that the letters will be published in the agenda or the minutes that will be going out, I think the community could organize this and just use those same letters, and as Councillor Graham pointed out, do this themselves. And I think having it sent from the council is weight enough for me, and then we can encourage the community to do their own action if that's something that they wish to do. And I'll certainly support them in those efforts if they want to.
Thanks, Councillor Lorber. And as usual, listening to the debate has helped me clarify my thinking on this as well. And I won't repeat anything anyone said, but I think my discomfort, which I couldn't articulate well before, was the idea of MySay starting to be used as a kind of a petitioning platform and the sort of precedent that could potentially create going forward when you think about the things that we might get coming through an AGME or other things. I think the idea of MySay being a petitioning platform makes me quite uncomfortable, so I won't support that. All right, are we putting it to a vote? Councillor Williamson-Wong, did you want to close?
Well, I'll just say thank you for, talking me through my creativity. I thought, why not try something new?
Cool. All right, let's go to a vote then. All those in favour? Councillors Sullivan and Williamson-Wong, and against? The remainder, so that's lost. So we're back to the item as amended by the addition of 4 and 5. Do we have any further discussion on the item? Can I put it to a vote? Or Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. I just wanted to, express a little bit of reservation about what I see as the potential to sort of inappropriately conflate the issue of convenience stores generally. They are the old-fashioned corner shop just reinvented, versus the illegal activity that is currently being allowed to flourish uncontrolled in those convenience stores. They are kind of separate issues. Each of them has something that we need to look at, but I do just worry that when we start talking about planning schemes, throwing babies out with the bathwater sort of thing, because by the time we change the planning scheme, one would hope that this uncontrolled illegal activity might have actually been addressed and stopped, and some of the criminal elements might have been brought to justice, hopefully.
We can now put this one to a vote, I believe. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, Councillor Williamson-Wong, you're going to leave us. Go and check for the supplies of birthday cake out the back, and we'll go to C25084. Do I have a mover for this one? Are we moving it with the amendment by officers in it? Yep, so Councillor Graham moving that with the officers' amendment. And the officers' amendment, just for clarity, is to drop item 5 and defer it to enable further consultation in C6, in fact. Do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Archibald. All right, is there any discussion on this one? Nope. We will put it to a vote then. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Good job, everyone. And just as a reminder, item 3 is being referred to the next meeting. So everything you heard tonight regarding item 3 will be relevant to the considerations in the next meeting on the South Fremantle Heritage Precinct. All right, that takes us to the end of the agenda. There's no urgent business, late items or confidential business, so that brings us to a close at 8:08. Thank you.